Hi, folks. This is Professor Diffley. This is Philosophy 255, Ethics and Social Work, Human Services. These are the first. This is the first of the lecture videos for Chapter 7. This chapter is really, really important here. This one deals with a professional relationship. So this is going to cover a lot of the circumstances and really instances where you can run afoul of the code, chances for unethical behavior for most likely to come forward. So there's a real importance on focusing on this chapter. So therefore, this chapter is a little longer than others. So you're going to get a little over a week when dealing with this one. So really try to take really good notes on this. I guarantee that not only would that help you for the quiz on this chapter, but it's really going to help on the final. A lot of the final is going to deal with these types of relationships increasingly, both in the scenarios, the ethical written ethical scenarios, but you're also going to get multiple choice questions that are going to pose certain scenarios and ask you about things like dual relationships, improper relationships, that sort of thing. So to help you with this too, there is a lecture outline. I'm also posting this as a Word document so that you can have it out when we're going through it. And so this is, all of these topics here are going to make it up, the main ones, 1 through 8 here, are all going to make it onto the quiz and the final. Especially, we're going to look at the fiduciary relationship and what that means and the practical issues of power dynamics in the professional relationship. Common impediments, problems to gaining trust, not necessarily between individuals, but in a broader sense in society. Then we're going to look at what the code, the social work code of ethics, has to say about the professional relationship. As you can see here, I've highlighted or put in bold all the code sections from this chapter that are going to be increasingly important. So code section 1.06, subsections A through F, 109, 10, 11, and then later here, code section 4.04. You notice there's also Massachusetts laws, which you have on Blackboard, and I'll show you them later in the slideshow. Just be aware of those. Then we're going to move into, what the standards have been in professional relationships, what the traditional view is versus the modern view, and we're going to see if there's, great change in that, what the differences are. But then here is a big thing. Dual role relationships is something you're going to see going forward a lot in this course. And this is, we're going to define what a dual role relationship is and how you deal with them and what the problems can be. This, goes into things like conflicts of interest and all sorts of unethical behavior. And doesn't even necessarily have to be malicious or ill-willed in any ways, but just things that can really hurt the professional relationship. So that a lot of it is going to come from this dual role relationships, especially as I mentioned before. You're not only going to see these kinds of things on the ethical scenarios where you write and tell me, what the code say should do, stuff we've been working on. But increasingly, you're going to get questions, especially on this quiz, where I'll say, here's an example of a dual role relationship. Which one is permissible? Which of these is not permissible? And we're going to cover that. It's covered in detail in the book, and it's here in the slides. That's why, as I've been saying, the exemplars are really important. The exemplars, any tables, any, examples they have in the chapter, and there are a bunch of them here. In this chapter really do help with giving you an idea of what proper relationships should be, the limits of them, the boundaries that we should have, that sort of thing. We'll get into, true telling lies and misrepresentations. And then the last thing is really important here. But it's about, the impact of this job type, this career of, of being a helping professional, the impact it has on people, specifically what they call compassion fatigue, but also PTSD issues. So we're going to look at all of that here. Again, this is there's a lot in this chapter. Is arguably the most important here going forward. You see, it has most of the code sections. Excuse me, or this is the most in the code sections I've included in a chapter before. So let's take a look at this as we go forward. All right, so let's start with this professional relationship and overview of what we're talking about here. This is the relationship you're helping professionally. You're there to help your client. So this is obviously trust is central to this, and we've talked about that before. So where we're at the fiduciary relationship. So this is something we talked about before in chapter 2. I've included there's actually a video for a definition of this in required videos for chapter 2. I'll put it in this chapter as well. In the notes, as there always, there's information here. This is the essentially the text of the video here, the definition, fiduciary duty, a link to the YouTube video as well. For you to check out. But again, it is really your legal responsibility to act solely in the best interest of another party. And so that would be here for your client. So you have the legal obligation to maintain that trust. Just like lawyers, you have to act in the best interest of your client. Same with the physicians, right? This is most similar to the duty of care. Act for and act in the best interest of your patient, your client, is what you're going to be focusing on for the fiduciary duty. So in order to achieve, this trusting relationship, clients expect that of their helping professionals, that they'll act morally, ethically, that they'll perform your functions competently, be concerned about you're going to care about them, be concerned about their problems that clients brings, don't belittle them, that sort of thing. And you're not going to exploit their vulnerabilities and take advantage of them is really what this means. In a helping relationship, especially if you're going to be a counselor or in other ways, you're going to know things about your clients. You're going to have power over them. We're going to see, withholding benefits, other things. There is chance for those to be exploited for your client, you to use your clients and to manipulate them. And that's something we're trying to avoid here. Why? Because there is a power imbalance here. It's by its nature. It's not equal, right? They're coming to you because they need help. You have a way forward for them. You can help them. You don't have answers to all their problems, but they're hoping you can help them. So they need you in many ways more than you need them in that case. You exert significant influence over their life of the client, right? If you could, you work for a social services agency, right? I say the most famous or infamous or whatever you want to call it, DCF, right? You have power to interfere with people's families. Again, with their benefits, you could help. If you're a counselor in some ways, getting them cleared to go back to a job, that sort of thing. You really do have some sort of power over them, and they know that. And so they may be open to be manipulated. Again, I've talked about this before, as where we want to direct our clients, tell them, give them the best advice there, but we can't make decisions for them, and we got to be careful. Sometimes the clients might say and do things that they think we might want to hear because they know they need to keep on your good side and that they need you to get what the help that they are requesting. So they may alter what they say or their decisions, in attempts to please you or to get what they need. And we're trying to avoid that. But they know this is not a even balance. You're not coming in this as equals there in that sense of power. But there are other impediments to clients' trust and in the world. Anti-intellectualism, the experiment expertise in America. Historically, America doesn't always like to look at or believe experts. There's always belief, especially when it comes to issues like doctors or, other helpers. It's one thing, people know you need to go to a plumber. If you want plumbing help, you're not going to hire me, a history or philosophy teacher, because I have no idea what I'm doing. But we don't always believe experts. You've seen that before. You can see that all around. It's just something that's, in history, there's a book called Richard Hofstadter's. You don't need to know this for the test, but Richard Hofstadter's Anti-Intellectualism in American History, a fantastic, widely regarded history book, and pretty much traces this distrust we have of experts or the elite in America, and sometimes that comes into play here. So other things is, people don't trust health insurance companies. Why? Well, health insurance companies are there to make money, not necessarily help you. And if you've ever dealt with health insurance, you know how frustrating this can be and how difficult it is and how mistrusting we are of them. And so that comes into it because the clients come to you for help, but you can be limited by these managed care or mental health services or, any healthcare plans. And so people understand that. And so there is a mistrust there. It is a business, right? Which means the goal is to make money. People are always going to be mistrusting of that to a certain degree when it comes to helping. Consumer rights revolution. Democratization, consumer rights revolution. This is both a good thing and it can have some drawbacks, right? This is the move over, you'll see in a client's bill of rights in hospitals, doctor's offices, places like that, which is good. We're trying to protect the consumer, so to speak, the person getting help and getting care. But it also, what could be the problem with this is, again, it can interfere in the sense where it can get in the way of where people are mistrusting of that. And also, it can just add more layers to it. But by and large, this has been helpful. But, the thing is, why did we need a Bill of Rights, a posted Bill of Rights? Well, it means that people weren't following the rules. And so people remember that, and they're going to be distrusting of that. So the fact that we need to come out and have that is going to make some, it shows you that in the past that that wasn't always the case. There's also a growing lack of privacy everywhere, as you know, you full well know. So even when, you're supposed to have that privacy requirement, it sometimes it can be out of the control of the social worker or others, what private information gets out there. Think hacks, things like that, and we're going to look at some more of those there. Let's look at the code then. So what does the code say? So if we're going back to the outline, this is one of the next bigger parts here. What does the code say about the proper boundaries here? 106 covers most of this, A through F, but we're going to look here at B. This is clear. This is about the fiduciary relationship and the trust. Social workers should not take unfair advantage of any professional relationship or exploit others to further their personal, religious, political, or business interest. Really what this is a prohibition of using them. This is saying that you have to have that fiduciary relationship, right? And so that is the main one. It's a catch-all, but it really is a big part of this. So I know this code section, it will come up a lot here. Other things going on, but continuing this, 106, other key parts here. G, one of the things here is that you have to understand this is really relates to you outside of the office, that your outside of the job. What you do in your private life also impacts your working life, right? Especially as we are more and more online, social media, that sort of thing. That what you do in private isn't always private, right? People are going to find that, and so they can hold that against you. It can impact how they look at you. What you say online, you might think you're just being, you're commenting on a post somewhere or in a comment section. Remember, when you're on the job, what you do in your private life reflects your job and your employer and things like that. And people can get in serious trouble for that. This happens a lot where people say things in public, and the companies will let them go. This is not a violation of freedom of speech, as many claim. Why? Because it's really the government that can't limit your freedom of speech. Our freedom of speech is actually limited in many ways all the time, and willingly so, right? There's certain things you could say, like think about television. There's only certain things they could say there. If a newscaster went off on a cursing tirade, they probably lose their job, right? Yeah, they have the freedom of speech to say it, but there are also consequences. Why? It's, when you're employed anywhere, you give up some of your rights in that sense, right? Is that you work for them. You have these what they call as morality clauses often in contracts for working, right? If you do something in your private life that reflects really bad on a company, they want to get rid of you, distance you themselves from you. And so you can be held accountable for that. What you go around saying about certain groups online, now if you're working with those people, that's going to come back and haunt you and look really bad. And it might even be example of an even deeper bias or something like that. But just be very, very aware that what you do in private isn't always private and will impact your job, can impact what your clients know of you and how they deal with you as well. So I'm actually going to cut it off there. And in video 2, we'll pick up with H, because this is really important here about interactions with clients on social media. So lecture video 2 for chapter 7 we'll pick up here at 106H. All right, see you in a minute.